Welcome back to An Hour to Give with Sam Laprade on 1310 News.
And we are back. Glenn Sheen, thank you so much for staying with me.
You're welcome, Sam.
And, RBC, as we've talked about, is such an incredible corporate partner, not only for Youth Ottawa, but many other organizations in town. And we've talked about that partnership. But I love, because I see you all over the place, and I love it. And tell me about your experience at the Spirit of the Capital Awards. Of course, RBC presenting sponsor of that event. Tell me what it's like to be there and be in that room.
It is completely uplifting. The stories that you see, how youth can overcome adversity, how they highlight on so many different levels when you invest in youth, such great things happen. Those stories of there was a woman last year. She herself was homeless and pregnant. She was Indigenous, but she was a homeless advocate. So she was out there doing advocacy work. She could live beyond her lived experience, if that's the right way of saying it, right? To sort of see the bigger picture. There was the youth that came over that I think he was 16. He had only a grade 9 education. He was graduating and going to aerospace engineering at Carleton, right? These kids are able to see a bigger world. It kind of makes you think, like, what was I doing when I was 16?
Let's not talk about that. First of all, we only have an hour. But I think part of it for me is when I get to meet people like Abdul. We're going to be chatting with Abdul a little bit later in the show. And, an opportunity to actually meet the youth. That's a really impactful piece. And for you to, not only work at RBC and look at, I'm assuming, thousands of applications a year for funding, but to actually get the opportunity to be face-to-face with some of the people you're supporting.
Right. It is. It's a really empowering experience. And you actually see, money matters. And as one of Canada's largest companies and one of Canada's largest corporate philanthropists, we have a right to do it, but when you can actually see the impact of those dollars and how that makes a difference, I can't even describe how it makes you feel.
When you're at the awards, for instance, and you're seeing not only the youth themselves, but parents supporting, siblings are there. So I love Youth Ottawa from the fact is that they, yes, of course, are looking after youth, but it really becomes a family affair.
And those racialized, radicalized, marginalized populations that really don't get a hand up. So there's celebrations, and you can see new Canadian families just beaming because their daughter's winning an award for academic perseverance or for standing up. There was I forget how old she was. There was a trans youth there talking about the work that she'd been doing to sort of raise the profile. I think she was 8 or 9.
Wow.
Right? And her parents were there beside her. That is moving.
It is very moving. I think those opportunities to highlight at the awards ceremony are really important. And then let's talk about the grassroots work they do, all year round.
Right.
How important is it for RBC to also back that everyday work?
It's critically important. We moved away as a corporate funder from really doing that sort of bricks and mortar stuff, right? That's important. Building hospitals, building buildings is really important. But we've really changed our focus in the last 5 years towards impact investing and making sure that our money is going towards programs like at Youth Ottawa that really provides fundamental support for things like the social entrepreneurship work that Youth Ottawa is doing.
When you think about all of the different, people that are applying to be part of the awards or the impact afterwards, years later, what do you think and what are you hoping the outcomes will be?
I'm hoping that they go back and they tell their story. I'm hoping that they go back and they actually keep on giving back to their community. They become good corporate, or not corporate citizens, but good citizens. I think that's key. I think, at this time in the world, there's a lot of disruption happening. We know, and we can talk a little bit further around the disruption in the economy and careers and stuff like that and what RBC is funding. But really, that resiliency, we really have to shine a light on kids that are doing good things and keep on helping them give back to their communities.
Let's talk about that a bit. Explore that a little bit with me in terms of how RBC is really investing in that.
So 2 years ago, we committed $500 million towards an initiative called Future Launch. So Future Launch is preparing youth for the future workplace of tomorrow. We know there's huge disruption. Everybody's feeling it. I don't have kids, but I'm sure if you do, and you're like, what is my daughter going to do for a job, right? And I forget, I'm going to make up some of the statistics, but they're really, half of the jobs in 5 years don't exist now, right? So how can you actually train for them? How can you go into schools? And it's nobody's fault, but between youth, employers, and the school system, are we adequately preparing youth for the future workplace of tomorrow? So we're strategically investing, again, over 10 years, $500 million towards experiential learning opportunities, access and the skill of networking, skills that youth will actually need to get the jobs of tomorrow, and then underlying that is youth resiliency, so youth mental well-being and youth mental health initiatives.
I'm really hearing collaboration and relationships.
Right. And so we work with, a broad range of partners. We work with post-secondary education institutions. We work with Boys and Girls Club, with ONFI, with JA, with Futurepreneur, with people like Youth Ottawa, to really sort of say, okay, what are those needs at a national and a local level, and how can we invest for impact and actually drive programs that actually change the trajectory of youth?
And it's that story of one. Right. I think we often think about, there's 5,000 youth or there's 10,000 people that need help. But if we can find one person and make a difference with one, we know the trickle-down effect is huge.
Exactly. And what I like about Youth Ottawa's programs is you think about, we're not only providing those ambassadors with the skills that they need to grow their resume and their job experience and get a job, but they're also going in and paying that back into the secondary school system, right? So it's a really it's a nice model. And from a social entrepreneurship, right? Youth Ottawa is creating a revenue stream for themselves, right?
It's brilliant.
So it's they hopefully will become self-funding in terms of the work that they do in the community,
right? And
they're not looking for a handout.
And that's such an important piece. I think a lot of nonprofits sort of say, I'm going to, approach big corporations and they're going to fund our programs, not realizing that it has to be a win-win on both sides.
Correct.
Right? That you need to also see the impact to know that your dollars are hard at work, as well as the organization making that impact for future generations. And I think, as you've said, Youth Ottawa, there's no better sort of way to think about the impact of youth than to arming them with the skills, relationships that they need to collaborate and move forward.
Right. And I think the important part of that question is, at RBC, we actually have a team in our national office in Toronto that actually helps not-for-profits and charities actually measure their impact.
Wow.
So we want to make sure that their programs are actually impactful, that they can benchmark them across nationally against other programs like their own, and they can make sure, and we can make sure, as being custodians of those dollars, that we're investing on behalf of Canadians, really, that it actually is driving impact and results into the communities where we live.
I think it's a really good point, because yes, you're a corporate partner, but essentially it's Canadians investing in Canadians.
Yeah, we we're in every town and village and whatever, right? And everybody needs a bank. We give back 1% of our net profits back through the RBC Foundation back to the community, which is close to $70 million a year.
Wow.
And then you put people and non-monetary sort of gifting on top of that. It's about $100 million a year that we invest back into the communities where we live and work.
I've said to you this before. You have got the best job.
I do.
And you agree every time I say it. I think it's a really, once again, we see each other at, whether it be galas or cocktail parties, and I always gravitate to you and say, Glenn, what's new?
Right.
So tell me, what is new in terms of RBC and some of the directions that you're taking?
That's a good question. You know what? We're always looking for interesting programs where we can work with partners. We're going to launch soon publicly a gift to University of Ottawa. They're building out an online skills-based training programs for students going into co-op, so those soft skills that they're not being taught in the classroom.
So key, right?
And they're going to eventually, in 3 years, actually get it so that any student in the university can access this online training. You just when we were talking earlier, we actually just made a lovely gift to the Ottawa River Keeper, right? Well, it's not attached to youth. We do believe that climate change is one of those things that really needs to be addressed as a community. So we made a nice gift, $350,000 gift to the Ottawa River Keeper to help their State of the River Shed report work. So those are really sort of good, fun things that I get to sort of work on.
You do. Honestly, I think you're everywhere. And I think the opportunity to not only connect to youth, or whether it be the environment or whatever the, sort of the target is in terms of making impact, that you have that opportunity to have those hands-on opportunities. And, whether you're actually down at the Ottawa River and sort of seeing what the impact there is, or you're meeting people like today, you met Abdul and had an idea. We're going to chat with him in a minute. Those face-to-face opportunities, like we mentioned, are really key. But the fact that you're in the community as much as you are is a real testament to your community spirit as well.
Well, we really believe, we have probably 1,000 employees working in the Ottawa area.
Wow.
And we have programs that actually reward them, recognize them for actually their volunteer work, sitting on boards, or actually getting together as a team and going out and volunteering. So, we really do believe about it's more than money. Our people actually matter as well.
People do matter.
Yeah.
And Youth Ottawa matters. And
a lot.
I am so absolutely thrilled that you were able to join me in studio today and represent RBC so beautifully and really speak on behalf of Youth Ottawa too.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Stay tuned, because we have Abdul coming up in the studio. He's going to be representing Youth Ottawa too today. Stay with us.
An hour to give. We'll return in a moment on 1310.